I want to thank you for joining us for today's edition of Transform HR On Demand. My name is Alyssa DeVere, and I'm the Executive Strategy Partner at PeopleDoc. And Transform On Demand captures casual conversations with really cool people who are seriously transforming the way HR works. So today we have the fabulous Dwane. He is the author of LeanHR, and he brings a real-world, in-the-trench approach to improving HR operations. He does this because he came from HR and spent over a decade as a practitioner himself, and before that had experience in operations, IT, and quality. So I love the perspective you bring, Dwane. I think it's brilliant in terms of not just your experience, but as a fellow writer. I loved your book, and I'm excited to talk about it today with you.
Well, thanks. I feel like you're selling me a little hard. Now there's expectations I have to live up to.
I should also mention that in his day job, so to speak, Dwane is also responsible for process design at Dovetail. So needless to say, you have very firsthand experience, and I thank you. I know you just came back from South Africa, so hopefully you're well rested and ready to rock here.
I actually, I hit South Africa and then over to LA and then over to Poland for a few days, so I have no idea what time it is.
Okay. Global world traveler, then some. Well, the book is chock full of really good examples and tangible how-tos. But one of the things that I wanted to start right off the bat, because I know you get asked this question a lot, is Lean HR is not about cutting down staff. It's about doing things a lot smarter and a lot more strategically. So maybe you can explain your definition so we get everyone on the same page.
Yeah, so that's, I talk about this a lot. That's one of the old jokes is Lean stands for less employees are needed. And it's just, we tell that joke, process designers tell it all the time too. But it's not. That's not the point, right? It's really supposed to be about, not doing any more work than you have to. And have to is defined by what is it your customers need, what's going to make them happy. I've always said the secret to great process design is to find the laziest people you can and let them design the process. The people who like to work really hard, they make horrible process designers. That's kind of our dirty little secret. So, but it's about figuring out, what we do every day. I mean, people, it doesn't matter what your job is. Everyone out there knows there's some level of nonsense that they deal with. And, leaning it out is really about, okay, well, let's stop doing that to ourselves then. Let's be a little smarter about it. Let's stop with the nonsense. And I think what holds most people back is just the inability to stop and ask questions about what it is they're doing. We are trained that even if we don't understand our job, we're not supposed to ask questions about it. We're supposed to at least act like it, right? Fake it till you make it. And we get caught up in that, this idea that we have to understand all the things we're doing. And it never ceases to amaze me when I'll really drill into somebody's job and say, well, why do you do this? Well, I do it because X, Y, Z. Well, why do you? And after 4 or 5 of those, you get down to, well, I don't really know. That's just what I was told to do.
So we always did it. So,
yeah.
Aside from, so what are the kinds of projects that you see most often after you've kind of done this analysis, needs assessment? And what are the kinds of things that you typically see need to be leaned?
So I'll tell you, for HR, it's always a couple of the same things. One of them is any time that you've got a process you're working through that has an approval baked into it somewhere, it's a huge red flag if something's wrong. Approvals are only there because you've got systems that allow you to go outside of the norm. So perfect example, almost every company I know has job grades. And those job grades have salary ranges. And those salary ranges are approved by compensation. So then when you're in the recruiting stages and you're going to hire someone, you've got a job description that has a job grade with an approved salary range. But yet every single job offer has to go back through compensation. And I always ask the same question, why? Well, because they want to approve it. Well, why? They've already told you what the job is worth. And it's like this light bulb goes on, and it's like, oh, so why are we doing this? Well, you're doing it because you've got a system that allows you to plug whatever number you want for that person's offer. So if your systems are built right, you don't need that extra layer of approval. You can cut out a whole piece. Recruiting is a place that always, I don't know if it's because we look at recruiting as kind of a soft art, so we don't apply a lot to it, or ironically, recruiters have all the data. They've got the easiest job when it comes to quantifying things. So recruiting gets a lot of attention from process design. It's also the one place, everybody talks about how hard it is to get metrics for HR. Here's the one that everyone's agreed to, and I don't have a good name for it. but it is a fundamental rule of business that you are paid less than you are worth. You have to be. For a company to stay in business, you have to be making less than you are worth to the company, right? If I'm paid $1, I've got to be worth at least $1 for the company to stay afloat. Well, if we can all agree to that, and everybody seems to agree to it, then I can extrapolate that out to figure out what you're worth per day. And if I know what you, or more specifically your job, is worth per day, I know how much an extra day in the recruiting process is costing me. So it gives you great motivation to go find those places. My favorite one that I found that was like the easiest thing in the world to put in place. So many companies do background checks, and they wait until they have their final candidate and everything's ready to go, and they've even given them an offer before they run a background check or a drug screen. Well, background checks and drug screens are cheap, but they add days to the process. So if I spend $50 2 weeks earlier, I can save $5,000 on the back end. That's easy math. And I promise you, no one who is in line to be a final candidate for a position is going to balk at a background check or a drug screen before they get an offer, unless they're likely to fail it. Which is another, little early indicator that something is wrong. But it's just thinking about things a little differently. It's about really kind of, getting away from the idea of, well, yeah, of course we do those at the end. That's just the way we do it. Ask good questions and be ready to, change the way you work. It's basic common sense, or maybe not common anymore, but basic sense. It's not as common as it should be.
Well, it's fair game. I think it's hard to break out of your everyday chaos and think sometimes. I think that's the bottom line. But one of the suggestions you made in your book to enable that is to really think along the lines of walking and talking with your customers, being your employees and other stakeholders. Can you address how HR people can break out of that craziness and maybe actually do some thinking and get some real requirements and needs from the community they serve?
Yeah, so if you go back to some of the basic premises of Lean, right, it talks about making sure that you're tied in with your upstream and downstream processes, meaning your customers and your suppliers. If you look at the way, like automobile manufacturers, Toyota is a great example. They pioneered a lot of this, and there's a lot of lessons we can take away from it. So you look at when they're sitting and they're designing a new brake system, right, for a car. And maybe brakes aren't the best example for Toyota, but we'll stick with it. When they do it, they've got their vendors at the table with them to design it, because the vendors are going to be producing the parts. They're going to be really important to this entire process when it's done. Too often with HR, we don't spend a lot of time outside of dealing with employees who walked into our office. We don't spend a lot of time dealing with our upstream and downstream folks. I've always questioned the value of having an HR department that sits together, that is around each other, that's kind of walled off from everyone else. It's traditional thinking. You have a department full of people, you put them together, they work together. But really, as HR practitioners, there's a whole lot more value in us being out in the field, out on the floor, out in the shops, spending time with our search groups, finding out what's important to them, letting them get to know us, being there around them. I don't need to sit with my director of compensation. I got a phone for that. I need to go be with my service groups. I need to be with my customers. That's how you get it. And it's even worse when you have HR practitioners, and too many of us are like this, that have never worked outside of HR. If you've never been on the shop floor, you're not going to be able to really understand what happens out there, and you're going to be doing HR to people instead of providing for their needs. So get out of your office, go spend your days out on the shop floor, spend your days in the field. Find out what's really important to people out there. Help them deal with things they care about, as opposed to proving how smart we are with succession planning and new forms.
So what are the organizations? Looking at the light on this camera, it's fantastic, which means that it's almost time for beer on Fridays. Because just saying.
I don't think I care for implementation that there's never not time for a beer on Friday.
Well, aside from the crazy lighting that I'm seeing right now, I guess I'm curious. So, what kinds of organizations, or are there characteristics or things that HR people can do to get their company behind taking a lean approach to HR operations? Like, in other words, do you see patterns in the kinds of companies that are more apt to do this? Every company culture is going to be a little different, right? And cultures that are a little more willing to take risks, and I hate saying this, but the ones that feel like younger companies, smaller companies, companies that need to be smart about how to deal with their money, tend to be more accepting. When you work in the big battleship that doesn't change course very quickly, it's really hard to get people on board. And honestly, if you're in an organization that has had Lean programs, Six Sigma programs, TQM, PDCA, whatever it is, come through and leave again,
you can really turn people off just by using the words. Talking about having a Kaizen event is enough to scare people into not talking to you anymore. But every single organization does react to the same thing, and that's results. So even if you're not in a place that's going to allow you to do a full-on program, just understanding how to do root cause analysis, understanding how to do problem solving. Forget everything else. Just the ability to solve problems is always valuable. So learn to do that. I mean, don't worry about sticking your nose into the finance organization yet and trying to help them rebuild the way they do things. Take care of your own house. Take care of what keeps you up at night, the things in the HR department that are painful to you, and fix them. And stop living with assumptions that, we do open enrollment once a year for a week because that's what we do. That's what keeps us busy in August, so that's what we're doing. Sometimes there's really good reasons for it, but most of the time it's just kind of what we've always done.
So we've always done. So, Mr. Globetrotter, now that you've come back from your world tour, do you see differences in global versus U.S. or international-based companies versus U.S.-based?
Not as much as you might think. Yeah, I mean, anything that's statutory, anything that's legally driven is going to be a little bit different. There's definitely a different attitude. I was just with an organization, I won't say who they are, but it was fascinating to me. It was a tobacco company, and they never stopped smoking. Inside the building, like they had a huge smoking lounge. The conference rooms, they were smoking conference rooms that had more ashtrays than chairs. Seriously. And yet, everywhere you went in that building, even though they had the displays for the cigarettes and they had all the warnings about cigarettes will kill you and all these things, even having all that, they were still putting up employee wellness flyers. And hey, it's important to pay attention. It's good. We're the same people everywhere around the world. We don't change all that much. Everybody's facing the same problems, and that's why one of the biggest value we have is in each other. Anything you're doing that you're trying to figure out, somebody else out there has done already and either failed or succeeded and learned from it. And whatever it is that you've done, somebody else is about to try that next. So, just putting yourself out there and getting to know folks, it's astounding how much we can learn from each other.
Well, I think it definitely is time for wine, beer, or whatever you do at the end of the day, at the end of the week. So I would like to, first and foremost, thank you immensely. This was really fun and interesting. And I want to call attention to the fact that not only can people find more information about you on your blog, buy the book. It's great. I challenge anyone to find the word "whence" in it because he actually uses it really well, and I was very impressed. Needless to say, I know, Dwane, you and I are going to both be on the docket speaking at New York State SHRM soon, so I look forward to seeing you there. It's really cool. If you have our viewers today, please stop by and say hi to either one of us or both. It would be great.
And I openly said, I did the Twitter chat with New York SHRM, and I said, and I always say it, anytime I'm going to a new conference, and this will be a new one for me, if people are there and you don't know me and you can find me, I will buy you a cup of coffee, we will sit and we'll talk for a few minutes, just at the drop of a hat. So find me. I'll be around.
I love it. I love it. And again, thank you for today. I want to thank our viewers, and of course, if you need more information about PeopleDoc or our past or upcoming Transform HR on Demands, please check us out at people-doc.com. Thanks, everyone. Have a super day.
Bye now.